All right, so good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Today, what is today? I don't know what day it is. It's Monday. That would be April 29th. Is that right? Yeah, April 29th. Who cares what day it is? So, Avengers Endgame came out this past weekend. It set box office records. 1.2 billion worldwide. It set U.S. domestic records. It set worldwide records, and it was a very fitting end to this, what I'll call the Infinity Stone timeline, or Marvel 616. That's the universe. I don't know what that means. There's 616 different variations or what, but so just FYI, as the title indicates, this is a spoiler review. It's hard to talk about Infinity War. It's hard to talk about Endgame without talking about spoilers, and so there are things that I really, really like in this movie. There are some things I have a few problems with. A couple things too. It doesn't take away from my enjoyment of watching the movie. So don't mistake this as, I didn't like the movie. I think it's the best rated in terms of the best reviewed Marvel film. But I don't think it's but again, the best rated, that just means favorable reviews. One of these days I will publish what my 22, I'm going to do all 22 films and say which ones are my favorite, which ones are not, that sort of thing. So, all right, so let's get this out there. Endgame, I give it a solid. I'm gonna give it 8 out of 10. I like to do things out of 10. Just gives you more opportunity to be a little more precise in your numbers. So 80%. I'm trying to get this camera to where it's not so dark. There we go. It is kind of a darker morning today. It's very overcast. It's not raining, but it did last night. Anyway, so let's talk about what I like, and this will probably might be a 2-part video because I'm only going to do this. These are about 15 minutes long while I'm going to work. What I really liked about it was one of the conclusions. This is the story arc of Tony Stark. I really, really enjoy. And he's never been not a narcissist in any of these films, but he obviously does care about other people. And that was evident even in the first movie. When Pepper gave him the gift that said proof that Tony Stark has a heart. He obviously was changing then, doing things for the better, seeing what some of his sins, so to speak, what they have caused on the world, and trying to make things right, still while being a little into himself, having an ego. So I really like his story arc in all of the movies that he's present in, and he's really felt, his presence is felt in all of them. The thing that I really like is that how they did the time travel in this movie. The time travel really presents a lot of problems in any movie it's in, because for one, we don't really have a good idea how it works, even if it does work. I mean, there's a lot of theories. There's a lot of people out there postulating, well, if you could do this, this is all you could do. And I think the way they presented it here was, I think, probably the most realistic in terms of, if it did work, this is how it would work. That, you would be creating alternate futures. That you wouldn't be fixing something, because whatever's happened in your past is in your past, and that is not changeable. The past is not changeable. So I like how they present that, and I'm still trying to wrap my brain around how it works in conjunction with Steve Rogers' ending. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Something else I liked the second time I saw the movie that I didn't like the first time, I guess I was confused when they went to get the Soul Stone. It was Hawkeye and Black Widow, and it was almost a repeat of Thanos and Gamora from Infinity War, getting the Soul Stone. In terms of structure, that one of them had to sacrifice the other, to get the Soul Stone. Whereas Thanos sacrificed his daughter, Black Widow and Hawkeye each wanted to sacrifice themselves because they felt that they were at the end of their road. Hawkeye obviously had gone down a very dark path of, while he was taking out bad guys, so to speak, he was on a very, very dark path of the Ronin path, and it was he felt that he was unredeemable at that point. And ultimately Black Widow is the one who does sacrifice herself, and Clint lives, much to his dismay. And I'm wondering if on some level maybe he thinks that they're just not going to do this, or maybe not succeed, or maybe he thinks even if they succeed that it won't bring anybody back, because he is the one who lost his family in the snap. His whole family died in the snap, and I think that Clint obviously is such a broken man at this point, and Natasha, who was very broken in her past, had healed herself. I think she had, made peace with who she was, or who she had been, and then who she became. And it was not that she didn't have anything to live for, but I think she felt, honestly, she said, this is why I'm here. This is my purpose now. And I like that. I like that someone can realize that they can say, my purpose is to sacrifice myself for the greater good. And I really like that type of message in any type of film or any type of media. It's a very Christian type message, as Christ sacrificed himself for the entire world. So I mean, I like that type of thing, that there's a greater good than just me. I liked it in Rogue One, and I liked it in this movie with Natasha. I'm kind of skipping all around here because this is kind of like how I do my Royals videos. I don't prep anything. I just get my thoughts out. It's just a discussion. So let's talk about what I didn't like. And there's other things. There's plenty of other things I do like. So don't take this as that's the only thing in the movies I liked. What I didn't like was I didn't like Thanos in this movie. The 2014 Thanos. So obviously, for those you've seen this because you're watching this, because why would you watch this spoiler review or if you hadn't seen the movie? So Thanos he steals Pym particles from Nebula from 2019, when Nebula's back in 2014 trying to get the Power Stone. He steals her Pym particles, and he creates a portal with the machine. Since and then they bring back their entire fleet, their entire army, to attack Earth in 2014 now. Or the 2014 Thanos comes to 2019. So really the question is, well, we won't get into the timelines of it, but I thought Thanos in Infinity War, I'm not going to say he was a sympathetic villain. I'm not going to say that. But I understood why he was doing what he was doing. Now, I thought he was going about it in an insanely horrible way. But he was the best villain. He was multi-layered. He was very interesting. This Thanos, 2014 Thanos, without the knowledge of what the stones provided, without that extra 4 or 5 years, he's just he's one-dimensional. And I just didn't like that. A lot of people give Marvel a lot of they give him a lot of flack because of the kind of the weaker villains. Loki obviously was always fantastic, but you could argue, Loki was, obviously died, as a hero. But most of the rest of the villains, Kate Blanchett's Hela was very interesting, but most of them are not that interesting. But Thanos was, and I didn't really like the portrayal of Thanos in this movie. He was just more of kind of a, especially since they killed 2019 Thanos just immediately. In the first 10 minutes of the movie, he was dead. But I think they did that really to show that there is no changing the past. All you can do is you can undo something. Like you can undo the snap and re-snap and bring people back. So the snap essentially works with all 6 stones with the glove. The snap essentially works by whatever the wearer of the gauntlet, whatever he or she chooses, that's what happens. So if someone chooses for, unlimited cans of Cheese Whiz, and to borrow a line, that's not a line from the movie, but they do. Cheese Whiz is in a funny part where Rhodey says, well, Thor says, what do you think is going through my veins right now? And he's like, Cheese Whiz. So yeah, where I don't even know where I was now. I was kind of rambling. Let's get back to the Captain America thing. All right, so I didn't like Thanos as a character. So now let's talk about Captain America's ending. Now this is something I have a serious problem with. I could survive. I can handle a less multi-phased villain. But what I really have a problem with is the ending. Now, I love the Tony Stark ending. I love Tony Stark sacrificing himself, and I choked up during the funeral scene. I want to say choked up. There were tears in my eyes. That was a very emotional scene, seeing everybody there, including the kid from Iron Man 3. I was surprised to see him there. But yeah, just about everybody was there except Gamora. That's something else we'll talk about later. So, why did I not like the Captain America ending? First of all, I thought Captain America should have died. Nobody else is getting a redo. Okay? Nobody else is getting a chance to right something that's wrong in their past, because the past is written and it can't be changed. Steve, after putting all the stones back to the exact point where they took them, which presents a whole nother set of problems, by the way, which we'll get, that'll be like another video. I won't have time to talk about it here. But the movie physics of time travel clearly stated that you come back to your current time. Now, if you get stuck somewhere, you're stuck there, and by you being there, you create a divergent timeline, and you cannot, so quote unquote, catch up to your to where you left, because by you being there, it creates a different reality. It might be very similar, but it's never going to be the exact same, because those two branching realities are now different, because your past is you leaving your present, you are leaving your future self, so to speak. You can't catch up with your future self. They flat out said that in the movie, that cannot happen. So Steve leaves on the time travel device with his time anchor on his wrist, was what I call them, the time anchor, the GPS units, in order to get him back. So what does he do? He puts all the stones back, presumably. I have no reason to believe he didn't. But then he missed his timestamp and goes right by it. And what does he do? He goes back to 1945, after, in his past, obviously, where he goes into the ice. He goes back basically to when the war is over, and finds Peggy, and you see them dancing in her house, or someone's house, and presumably he does marry her, because he's got a ring on at the end of the movie, because now all of a sudden what you see is, well, before you saw that, you saw him sitting on a bench right next to the time machine as old man Steve Rogers. So what the movie is telling us is that that Steve Rogers goes back and he lives his life with Peggy. He actually lives a life. He's not a superhero anymore. He just lives his life, lives it out. And then in 2019, he's an old man, and presumably Peggy is dead, and she still dies in 2016. But he is still alive in 2019 and sitting on the bench and passing the Captain America mantle off to Falcon. Here's the problem with this. Steve should not be there. According to the rules that they clearly stated, he should not be there. He created a different version. Let me get this started here. He created a different version of the future, which is a divergent timeline, an alternate reality, just like what, kind of similar in the vein of what the Sorcerer Supreme was talking about. He cannot catch up with what I'll call the hero timeline, the Infinity Hero timeline, where he left from, where he left Bruce Banner, the Hulk, and where he left Falcon and Winter Soldier there. He can't catch back up with them, because all of those events are in his past, and him being there, those events aren't going to happen again, because they're in his past. They're not in the future of future Steve, because the Thanos has been dealt with. As weird as it sounds, Thanos won't present himself, because Thanos is no longer. He was removed from this timeline, and he's not in this one anymore. But even if you don't, even if you think that's not true, which it might not be, Steve is in a different reality. He is now essentially, now Peggy cannot marry the other man that she married. She cannot have the children with that other man that she had. So this is a different reality. I mean, when you're talking about erasing kids, unborn kids from the picture, that has drastic, you're talking about the butterfly effect. So that obviously has a whole heck of a lot of problems now. He cannot catch up because here's the thing. Let's say some of Peggy Carter's kids with her original husband, let's say one of them knew Bruce Banner at some point. You know, not an Avenger or anything, but knew Bruce Banner. Now, by Steve going back and having kids with Peggy, or presumably, we don't know if they had children or not, but we know she didn't have her other children now. But he goes back to the same exact timeline where in Hulk's past, Hulk knew that Peggy died in 2016 and that Steve didn't marry her because Steve was in the ice. Well, now Peggy gets married to Steve. So do all these, but it doesn't make sense because that's now Steve's past now too, because he lived this life with Peggy. But but everybody else doesn't have those memories because it's not their past. So because it's not their past, and now Steve has two pasts with Peggy, he cannot be in the future, or he cannot be in the present with Hulk, with Falcon right there to hand it off. It doesn't make sense. And that's what I didn't like about this. And from a sentimentality standpoint, I know a lot of people like that he finally got his dance with Peggy, and he finally ended up with her. And, died an old man. Look, I don't like that. And the reason why is because Steve made a choice. He became Captain America, and he made a choice to sacrifice himself, which ultimately he lived, but he sacrificed himself for the greater good in the first Captain America. And it's heartbreaking that he didn't end up with Peggy. But that's how it works sometimes. And that's why I liked that ending, even though it was incredibly sad. It was satisfying because this is how it's supposed to be. And that movie was in 2011. We've had 8 years to make peace with what happened there, and now they've undone that. It does not create an emotional. It doesn't make it more emotionally satisfying, in my opinion. Now, think about X-Men Days of Futures Past. Now, obviously, the time travel mechanic works a little different in that movie than this one. Now, because when Logan resets basically the past and everything becomes, the Sentinels are no longer created, and he's back in 2014 or 20 whatever it is. It's actually a little past that. It's probably like 2020, but anyway. He's back in his present time, and then he sees all these people that he lost, and that is very emotionally satisfying. And then he sees Jean. He doesn't end up with Jean. She's with Scott. She's with Cyclops. But the torment that went through his life, and the fact that she's alive, that is emotionally satisfying. It would have been stupid for Scott to still be dead and for Jean to be alive, and Jean just throws herself at him and says, oh, we have a chance to be together now because we couldn't be together at the first. No. He restored her, and she was still with the man she was supposed to be with. So, again, I didn't like that part of it. So, anyway, I'm going to make a video number 2 because this is now at almost 25 minutes and I got to get into work. So thank you for watching. Part 2, we'll talk more about maybe the divergent timelines that were created by them doing their time heist. So thanks a lot.